Welcome to the Cannabis 360 High Fidelity Episode 2. We're joined today by Koutsandrea, Lead Project Advisor at AAPS, and we'll be talking today about some of the recent regulatory changes announced by Health Canada. How are you today, Vicky?
Hi, Connor. Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And March, it's been a busy month for regulatory changes that have been announced by Health Canada. So really excited to chat with you today about that and to kind of just see where we're at and what some of those changes are. So can you walk us through those and really kind of what does that mean for license holders now?
Yeah, of course. You're absolutely right. We have a lot of regulatory changes coming in effect. So a lot of exciting news, I would say, for license holders. So I'll start with the change that is already done, and it's coming in effect as of April 19, I believe. It was circulated through an email to license holders from Health Canada. And basically the change is that right now, whoever is a microprocessor or holds a standard processing license is also able to sell fresh and dried cannabis from the start without having to amend their license and add the activity of these product classes. And that's very exciting, I would say, for the majority of license holders because they won't spend as many resources as they used to. So time to market will be reduced. It will be a very exciting change coming forward. On the other hand, there are people that they have already applied for their license the past few months and they have gotten it, which means that they've already wasted these resources, and for them it's not very exciting. So from clients I've heard a little bit of disappointment because they had to go through the process, they had to wait for all the review from Health Canada, whereas now it's going to be way easier moving forward. I would say regarding that change, things will be fairly simple. So once you apply for your license and you have the review completed by Health Canada and you successfully get your license approved, you will no longer have any conditions as a processor in your license, except that you will not be able to sell extracts, edibles, and topicals. That doesn't change. But the conditions right now will not include fresh and dried cannabis. So as a processor, you're able to sell to the consumer dried, fresh cannabis, as well as plants and seeds that were there before the change as well. So that is the main change that is coming in effect, again, as of April 19. And then we also have some other exciting announcements from Health Canada. We are still into the process of public comments, so nothing is set in stone, but these are the intentions from Health Canada. And that has to do with analytical license holders, as well as analytical testing license holders, as well as research license holders or people that they want to apply for a research license, essentially, and also the general public. So let's start with the first announcement, and that has to do with general public, and it has to do with the possession of non-solids containing cannabis. So essentially, Health Canada decided that it's not fair for producers that they produce beverages to have to comply with the same requirements as other non-solids containing cannabis because of the fact that it's more voluminous. Like we have the cans of any kind of beverage will be more in terms of volume compared to edibles or other product classes. And that is why they are changing the schedule that refers to the equivalency, dried cannabis equivalency. However, I want to mention here that does not affect microprocessors and the table that has to do with conversions. So this has to do with general public and how much you are supposed to carry with you in terms of dried cannabis equivalency. So nothing changes for the processors on that aspect. And the other change has to do with analytical testing license. So right now, it's not only cannabis processors that they will be able to sell reference standards. That's the intention of Health Canada, at least, to allow also other labs, such as government labs and also analytical testing license holders, to produce and sell reference standards as well as test kits. And also, for that kind of license, the requirement is that you need to have a key position titled as head of laboratory. And the requirements are pretty strict in terms of educational background. So Health Canada now considers of widening a little bit the equivalency requirements for the degree of the head of laboratory. So before, it had to be recognized by Canada. It had to be a university degree recognized by Canada. But because of the limitations that entails, Health Canada considers to kind of widen the requirements and also allow for other kind of degrees, I would say. We need to still see what's going to come in effect, but that's the intention. And that is from also the analytical side perspective. And the last change that was introduced by Health Canada has to do with the research licenses and the fact that now they are trying to introduce interventional non-therapeutic research for cannabis that will not require the clinical trial allowance from Health Canada, essentially. So before, Health Canada would allow certain license holders, research license holders, to conduct organoleptic and sensory testing to cannabis with some limitations, but they were very strict in a sense that you had to sign attestations, you had to attest that you're not doing anything with subjects other than just palate testing. For anything else that would involve human subject, you would need to get an objection letter from Health Canada and go through the process for clinical trials, which made it really hard for researchers to apply because for cannabis, the standards are a little bit different than drugs. So for cannabis, we have GPP, but for drugs, we have GMP. So we are talking about a little bit more stricter standards there. Some research could not comply with that, so they wouldn't be able to go through the process. Right now, things seem a little bit better. It seems that it will be easier for somebody to contact research regarding product development, as well as to see the risk and effects of cannabis. And that's a very exciting, I would say, step moving forward.
Okay. No, that's interesting. So yeah, a little bit of loosening of the rules sort of around the R&D license. Yeah, changing that beverage equivalency. I know some people will definitely be happy about. But yeah, I think the big thing and the big announcement, right, is the processing license holders and then no longer requiring that sales amendment. So can you briefly just kind of walk us through like what a sales amendment is and what that process did look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So before the change came into effect, or is about to come into effect, we still have a little bit more. The license holders would need to submit information for at least 2 lots or batches of dried or fresh cannabis in order to get their this type of cannabis class added in the license and be able to sell to consumer. So the license by default would be issued with conditions, and these conditions would not allow the sale of anything else but seeds and plants unless the license holder would apply for that sales amendment. So they would have to submit information such as packaging information or pictures of the lots, labels. They would need to explain their production model to Health Canada, present their certificate of analysis to ensure that these lots were meeting the specifications set by the license holder. And this was a little bit of back and forth between the license holder and Health Canada because there were always questions during the review stage. Sometimes license holder would need to adjust their specifications and so on. So that would potentially take between 2 to 6 months, depending on, of course, how many questions Health Canada had and how compliant the license holder would be. Right now, this is all lifted, so this requirement will not be in place anymore. People will just get a license from the get-go that it says you are allowed to sell plants, seeds, fresh and dried cannabis. And then if they really want to sell cannabis 2.0 products, they would have to apply for the amendment. So that doesn't change, at least for now. It seems that Health Canada is a little bit more concerned when it comes to anything that is ingested, or like they think that it might require some additional review. With that being said, it doesn't mean that the license holder should not comply with all the requirements in place, because I would say, and from my perspective, that maybe it would take some resources and some more time to get the product to the market, but Health Canada was sure that the products were compliant before they hit the market. Right now, it's going to be like more products in the market, more competition, and hopefully license holders still have all standards in place. Otherwise, when they have a potential audit in the future, there might be more complications. They might need to recall products if they're not complying with packaging and labeling requirements. And the process was not only just applying for the amendment, you have to notify Health Canada when you are bringing a new product to the market. So that happens through the CTLS, and it requires at least 60 days of the notification prior to allowing the product hit the market. So that is still there, and that doesn't change. And it means that Health Canada will still have some kind of information about the product. If they have any concerns, they will communicate within that 60-day period with the license holder to make any changes before the product actually is in the market.
Yeah, really, really important points there. I think I'm glad you brought up the fact that it is only applicable to dried and fresh cannabis, not those additional product categories like extracts, edibles, and topicals. I think that's a really important point. And then another thing that you bring up is, this isn't just like a green light now to, stop being compliant and not follow the rules. And, there is still a vetting process that companies are going to have to go through in order to get their product to market. And that sort of brings me to my next point. So I think, this reduced regulatory burden is definitely a positive change. But, what kind of impact do you actually see this having for license holders in terms of their ability to bring product to market? Do you think this is going to have a huge impact, or is it more of just kind of a small step in the right direction?
I would say that it will have a pretty big impact, in the sense that the way I see it, at least, is that there will be more competition. So more product coming into the market right now, because before, a lot of especially micro license holders, processors, would just decide not to sell to consumer. They would just keep the license with their restrictions in place and just opt to do intra-industry sale instead of just selling to retailers and potentially to consumers later on. So I think now we will see more product in the market, and hopefully that will have a positive impact in terms of product features, so that there's more, something stands out more for the consumer. So I consider that to be a positive change. Also, I think that now license holders can focus more their resources on other things, rather than just spending time and effort with Health Canada communicating back and forth. But with that being said, again, that means that they will have to do the research before actually producing a product intended for sale to consumer, because again, they will need to make sure this is compliant. I'm pretty sure Health Canada did that because they wanted to reduce their resources on their end as well, having to review all these applications, creating all these backlogs, and not being able to meet their the timelines, at least the timelines that they were suggesting. But at the same time, that means that they may have more resources now to go on sites and inspect and perform more audits, coming out from hopefully COVID as well, and returning to on-site audits, not only visual and virtual audits. So I would say right now that is another aspect that license holders should consider, and that can also have a huge impact to licenses but that's a negative impact, like having to recall products or not being compliant with other requirements. And of course, time to market is another thing. So right now, anyone that has like the license without the conditions for fresh and dried cannabis, they will be able to market the product after the 60 days have passed. And they won't have to wait for Health Canada's initial kind of review for their product. It would be only those 60 days. Before, it would be whatever time Health Canada required for the review, additional to the 60 days of notification. So that would be more time, of course. Mm-hmm. And that's a side note as well. And I said that to a lot of clients that they were kind of disappointed with the change. Whoever already got their license amended, it means that they have right now the advantage of still selling and not waiting for the product to hit the market. Because even if people that they already applied and they will get their license amended, it will still take about 90 days for the license to be reissued, plus the 60 days of the notification. And then that means, you know, that potentially will mean more time until they hit the market, at least for now. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, it will be different, but at least now people that they already have amended licenses, I think they still have the advantage of selling the product to the market.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And then I guess just something I would add to that too is you know, depending on what province you're in, but most provinces, it still is there's dealing with the provincial distributor, right? So even though you have this, no longer require to go through the sales amendment process, you do still need to deal with these large provincial distributors that, you know, do tend to favor larger processors generally. That's why we see a lot of micro cultivators with a processing license will still partner with larger processors in order to get their product actually in the market. And there's, you know, a number of different sort of logistical reasons for that. But again, hopefully this does, you know, like you said, free up resources on both sides, not only just with the license holders, but also on the Health Canada side as well, because like you mentioned, COVID really has had an impact in terms of them actually being able to do those on-site audits and inspections. So, you know, that will potentially start, you know, going back to normal a little bit, right? But yeah, I want to say, like, how do you think this demonstrates though that, you know, Health Canada and the provinces are listening? For example, you have the OCS flow through program, which is again sort of an example of trying to get more diversity in the market and more SKUs listed. And then also you have Alberta, for example, that just got rid of online sales and delivery and will no longer be competing with retailers on that front. So yeah, like is this overall maybe a small step, but sort of a positive shift and a sign that we're moving in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We still have a long way to go. It seems that there's still a lot of barriers between, you know, processors and the market. However, it does show that Health Canada is listening. It does show that they're taking into consideration comments that they were made throughout this period that cannabis is legalized after 2018 at least. And there are a lot of organizations like C45, for example, that they do hold this continuous meetings, and they do have Health Canada agents hoping in and sharing their like point of view. And it seems that that's like they're also understanding of the industry standards. They want to see how the regulations impacted everybody and what positive changes they can make. Of course, we cannot expect like huge changes, but these small steps show that we are moving towards a very positive direction.
Yeah, I really do. It feels like there's a shift happening in the industry where there's more and more focus on advocacy and lobbying efforts. I think obviously that does coincide as well with the mandatory review that is supposed to happen this year. I know that it's been, I don't think it has actually started yet, according to some reports, but sounds like it should be starting pretty soon at least. So that's really exciting. The federal budget announced sort of like an advisory panel as well, specific to the cannabis industry. So yeah, like you just said, positive steps. I think moving forward, not necessarily maybe the huge sweeping changes that some people are expecting or hoping for, but it's a start at least.
Yeah. And
Well,
I would like, sorry to interrupt you. I would like to add here that also there's a shift in terms of the industry itself. It seems that now licensed producers kind of understand more quality and what that means for the product. Initially, when we had to kind of transition from the gray market to the legal market, we would see that a lot of people would not be as compliant. They would fight the regulations, or they would think that, there are things that they can do without complying with the regulations. But right now, I think that the majority of the industry understands the importance of quality and integrating quality in their product and trying to improve the product features without compromising quality and safety of the consumer. So I think that's also why Health Canada started implementing those changes, making some exceptions, understanding that, people now, they realize the risks are not as many as they used to be in the past. So I think there's also that factor taken into consideration.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like, the industry is starting to mature, it's starting to stabilize, the sky hasn't fallen, that sort of thing, right? That's happening, and they're realizing that, like you just said, the sort of reduced risk here. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that, detailed explanation in terms of this recent change. Like I said, I think it is just a really exciting time right now, and it will be really cool to see just sort of how policy and regulations shift over the next couple months and years. It seems like they're happening very, very quickly right now. So thank you again for joining me today. It was great to have you. And anyone who's interested in getting in touch with Vicky, she's very well experienced in terms of cannabis consulting, licensing, quality assurance, regulatory compliance. What's the best way for people to find you, Vicky?
I can post my email actually, and I think that's the best way to reach out. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions or chat more with anyone that has any insight in those changes as well.
Exactly, yeah, or reach out directly to AAPS, and they can definitely connect you with Vicky for any of your cannabis consulting questions or inquiries.
Perfect.
All right, take care, Vicky.
You too, bye-bye.
Bye.